when you have a vast and very expensive Homeland Security bureaucracy with not that much to do. Now, there hasn't been a terrorist attack on America since 2001. Flight delays that kept us from getting to our families on Christmas. But few, if any, have resulted in uncovering real terrorists. And so the FBI has resorted to creating terrorists in cases where they couldn't find any. You see, they solicit Muslim Americans and spend months working on them with various schemes to take up the so-called jihad against our country. It's called entrapment, and it was a major issue in a recent New York City known as the Newburgh 4. RT's whether this was a case of homegrown terror or manufactured crimes. Take a look.
May 2009.
According to the FBI, the four men intended to carry out their plan today.
4 African-American Muslims are arrested.
What do you have to say, sir?
Paraded in front of New York news cameras, presented as the faces of homegrown terrorism. 4
individuals that sought to bomb Jewish facilities here in the Bronx and also take down a military aircraft in Newburgh.
A terrifying plot the FBI claims to have thwarted. The suspects, quickly dubbed the Newburgh 4, are poor, illiterate ex-convicts with neither passports nor licenses.
No direction by a foreign entity or a terrorist group.
Instead, direction came from Shahid Hussain, a Pakistani immigrant on the FBI payroll, reportedly paid nearly $100,000 for his services.
FBI operatives provided the fake C-4 and actually showed them a fake Stinger missile.
Fake weapons and a manufactured terror plot. According to court testimony, Hussain recruited the economically strapped defendants by offering cars and cash to carry out the orchestrated operation. Then the agent provocateur testified as the government's key witness.
In post-9/11 America, the FBI has upped its ante against terrorism, allegedly foiling plots across the country. The question is, would there be any plots to foil without government informants in place to help create them? Despite surprisingly little criticism from Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch, others have expressed alarm over what they term entrapment, a practice considered unacceptable in countries all throughout Europe.
No, I don't think it is. I know it is. This is entrapment.
Alicia McWilliams-McCullum is the aunt of 29-year-old David Williams, one of the Newburgh 4. She says her nephew is languishing behind bars for a fake terror attack grown in the home of the U.S. government.
They are creating scenarios. They are manufacturing crimes that would not have occurred if you had not planted an unconstructive seed into a community.
Bin Laden is still out there. There are real terrorists out there that we should be concerned about, and they should use those resources to find those individuals and not sit back and rely on informants to make up crime.
Well, these were all people that we began to identify.
Attorney Steve Downs, who tracks cases like the Newburgh 4, argues the U.S. government is systematically employing preemptive prosecution, targeting those whom officials deem predisposed to committing crimes before an actual crime is committed.
They're taking some really down-and-out, rather vulnerable individuals and not only implanting the ideology of jihad on them, giving them all the things that they need, all of the material, setting up the plan, doing all the research, everything else, and then grabbing them and then claiming that these were homegrown terrorists. It's just a fiction.
Downs created this 10-foot wide visual listing the names of individuals he believes were entrapped by the FBI.
Government decides that for some reason your ideology is causes them concern, because then they can come after you and they can manufacture crimes against you and they can make up a whole case and put you through a whole thing, and eventually if they can persuade a jury that this manufactured case is valid, you can go away to jail for a very long time.
A guilty verdict for all 4 men.
As is the case of David Williams and the other 3 who now face life in prison.
I don't have slave owners. I got government owners. Government that will sell a family off a political game. And this is a goddamn shame. That's why I'm sad to be a goddamn American today.
Marina Portnaya, RT, New York.
Now, there was some very real outrage there from the family members of the Newburgh 4. Joining me now for more from our New York City studio is RT's Maria Portnaya. Hi, Marina. Thank you so much.
that they are victims of the FBI point to a pattern. There's other cases such as the Fort Dix 5. There's another case up in Albany that the FBI is using the same informant for the Newburgh 4. They're using for a case, or have used for a case in Albany, in which a pizzeria owner and an imam from a mosque, both Muslim men, were convicted on conspiring to help fund attacks and help plan terrorist attacks. And the supporters of those men in Albany, supporters of the men in the Fort Dix 5 case and the Newburgh 4 case, they argue that the FBI is purposely planting these paid informants that they say are not even trained properly, and giving them the incentives, these informants incentives of $100,000 salaries to go in and find would-be terrorists, and which would allow the FBI to foil a crime before this crime is committed. But as we've been asking with this story is, would there be a crime without the FBI's involvement and without the paid informant that the FBI has hired?
Well, and the system is almost stacked up against whoever ends up being the target of these paid informants, because a lot of these informants are guys who have gotten in trouble with the law themselves, and so instead of going and serving their time, they're essentially being co-opted into working as informants, and it's in their interest to actually convince the FBI that, they found other guys that are about to commit crimes. I mean, it really is in their interest to prove that innocent people might be doing something wrong.
Lucy, as a matter of fact, I'm glad you brought that up, because according to what's been reported about this informant, Shahid Hussain, who's serving as the informant in the Newburgh 4 case, he's a Pakistani immigrant, and he immigrated to these states in the early 1990s, and he was caught cheating on driver's license exams for immigrants, and according to what's been reported, he faced a string of felonies followed by deportation, and the FBI allegedly offered him an alternative of staying out of prison and not being deported, of going to work for them. And because he fit the right profile, according to what's been reported, spoke the right language, was from the right country, and was able to get into these communities and develop relationships, then they hired him. So yeah, you're absolutely right in terms of the informants and their experience.
I want to switch gears a little bit and look at the justice system itself and sort of the lack of outrage by a lot of the institutions that exist here to protect the rights of innocent Americans who are being victims of these crimes. And I want to play you a soundbite that we have from Malcolm Smart of Amnesty International talking about the justice system, not here in the U.S., but in Iraq. Let's take a listen.
Some may be forced to confess. They may go before courts that will accept virtually any information as evidence against them. They may even be sentenced to death. It's a system that doesn't distinguish between, who are the real culprits and who are the innocent victims.
Now, Marina, I don't know if that sounded familiar to you, but that seems like he's almost talking about the United States here, and yet have we heard anything from Amnesty and other rights groups on this?
Absolutely not, Lucy. We have not heard anything from Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch. And Amnesty International in particular needs to start focusing on these cases and what is happening within the borders of the United States. If they're going to try to be fair and judicial around the world, that's great. But, there's a lot of similar cases to the Newburgh 4 that are taking place here in the U.S. that have received no attention from Amnesty International. And the supporters of these defendants have spoke out and said, where are these so-called human rights organizations? How come they are not questioning what is happening here in the U.S. And how the U.S. government is treating their own Americans? So it's interesting to see Amnesty International speak out about what's happening in other countries, but yet say so little about what's happening here at home.
All right, Marina. Well, thank you so much for bringing us this important story. Other outlets may not be covering it, but we know that you're on it. Thank you so much. Now, still to come